long story short, I went back to the dressing room area. Eric Gomez saw me. We had some words, and I was taken out back of the MGM, and I was dragged across the gravel. My son screaming, I'm fighting, I'm in these high heel shoes. I'm screaming, and this man heard me screaming, and he intervened. And I remember grabbing him and saying, "Get my son! Get my son!"
All right, we are joined today by a really special guest, Angelique McQueen. Can I call you Angie?
Mhm. Absolutely, everyone does, yes.
Okay. Now,
Angie's much
Angie
easier.
came to my. It actually is. I don't know why. It seems fine, but Angelique. Okay, I guess that's not bad, but for some reason it just tripped me up. Um, Angie came to my attention through Trisha Morrison, who I had on the show previously, who was the widow of Tommy Morrison, who passed away in 2013. What's fascinating is that Angie has her own parallel story with not only the boxing world, but the rock and roll world and much else. And I wanted to share that with all of you today. How are you doing today, Angie?
I'm doing well, thank you.
So to get started, let's go back in time. I think you were talking about you grew up in a fairly religious family and wound up in a burlesque show touring the world. Can we just talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. I was first working at Fashion Bug, just a clothing store, after I graduated high school. And a girl came in and she had all this gold jewelry on. And I said, "Oh my God, who loves you?" And she said, "I just danced in a club in a bikini." And I said, "What?" She goes, "Yeah, like if you're at the beach." And she was telling me she made almost $1,000 a night. And I'm thinking, bikini, beach, dancing, and $1,000. Heck yeah, that's good. I'm gonna go check that out. So I started dancing. It was called the Living Room in Dayton, Ohio. And the other girl came in. Somebody broke their ankle. So Sandra, which her name was Barbie, she went by Barbie Brandt. She came into the club. She said, "I need someone to leave tonight to New York to join the group." Absolutely, yeah, I'd love to go, New York. So then from New York, it went to London, Finland, Scotland, Australia, Jamaica, Aruba, Carousel, Bonaire, Venezuela. 2 years straight
Wow.
touring. Yeah,
Wow.
it was
How old were
great.
you at the time?
I was actually just barely enough to drink, 21.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's a pretty cool way to see the world, though. I mean, amazing.
it was yeah, I would come home. My grandparents were very religious, but they told me that if the men were stupid enough to give their money away to me, that I should be smart enough to take it. So
Okay.
that's how it went. So every Sunday, like if I would come home off the road and I would go to church and they would want to hear all about Scotland or Venezuela, and they just loved, we just would sit for hours at the dinner table talking about everywhere I had gone. I didn't really give the details, but what I remember, one story was hilarious because I went to Scotland and I went to the lake, Loch Ness, and I put my hand in the lake and I was like, "Here, Nessie, Nessie, Nessie." And my girlfriend came up behind me and scared me to death, and I peed my pants. Oh my God, it was so scary. I thought she had me for sure.
That is
Yeah,
classic.
that's a
Now,
good memory.
was it during this time you met your husband, Audie Despero?
That was after we got back off tour. We did go to Ohio. I met him in Ohio. I met a lot of rock and roll stars. We would tour and we would do a lot of the places that they would do. So we
Mhm.
had a show at a place where they had a show the next night. So we stayed, and that's how we met them. And I met Audie um, the night after we did our show. Yeah.
Okay. Now, Audie is the current or former drummer to Great White?
He Yeah, I believe he still is the drummer of Great White. Um, that's the group that was responsible for 100 people dying in a fire in Rhode Island.
Yes, which is a fascinating story. And you had mentioned that the pyrotechnics involved, you have a personal connection with them.
Those pyro, they were in canisters. They were about, I don't know if you can see, I would say they were probably about 14 inches tall. Um, they stayed in they were stacked in a room at our house, and it would always, there was, I would say, hundreds of them in this one room. And I remember the sunlight coming in and getting scared that if it would get too hot, that maybe it would ignite. And they were given to Great White by Kiss, the band Kiss. Paul Stanley gave all those pyros to Great White. They were supposed to be, um, whenever they're done with their tour, they're supposed to, you know, get rid of them the legal way. You're not supposed to just hand them off to some other band, especially Great White, because they were doing small clubs, and those pyros were for arenas. Great White wasn't doing arena shows anymore, so they shouldn't even had those. Paul Stanley shouldn't have given them to Jack Russell, but he did. And Kiss was responsible for that fire, in my opinion. Yeah, those pyros were for Kiss shows, and Kiss did arenas, very large arenas. You see them on the stage, they just blow up, but the arena is so huge. But the club that Great White did that night in Rhode Island, it was just a tiny little club, and I guess they had used a certain kind of foam to uh, keep the sound from, because the neighbors had been complaining. So they used just like foam that really went up fast. And then, that day I remember that day calling my mom and telling her that I felt ill. I felt like something was wrong, and I wanted to call my mom and make sure she was okay. And then later on she said, turn on the TV. And then I saw Jack Russell, and then I saw the flames, and I knew, why are they using those pyros? That tiny little club. But they were at our house. We had them stored in our house. I know that they were the same exact pyros. The same ones I saw on the TV are the ones that were at our house.
That's crazy. Now, you were still with Audie at the time?
No, we were already divorced when I saw it on the TV. He was not actually at that show. He was not at that show. We had already divorced, and they had already broken up because I beat this girl, Mark Kendall's wife. I beat the hell out of her, like really bad. She told Oscar that I was married before I could tell him. And so I beat the hell out of her really bad. And the band broke up because they wanted to have me arrested. And my husband, Audie, was like, no. And then Jack, the lead singer, was like, no. She already had it coming. That's the code. I guess that means when someone cheats on somebody, you're not supposed to tell.
You were with Audie, and then you met Oscar de la Hoya at work. Can we go into what happened?
Okay, so yes, I was married, and my husband was broke, and he was taking me to these strip clubs to see where I could make the most money. It ended up being in Anaheim. It was called Fritz 2, and I auditioned, got the job. I was working from 3 in the afternoon till 3 in the morning every day. I was bringing home around 1,000 to 1,200 a night, and he started becoming very abusive. And I worked my ass off. And I remember him telling me, you will never find anybody better than me. I went to work one night. This guy kept coming in night after night, asking me out. I was there to make money. He wasn't giving me money, so I ignored him. And I was on stage. This big guy comes up to the stage and he says, "You're it's requested a VIP area." And I said, "Take a number because I'm making money and there's a line." Yes, I tried to make it seem like there, but he came back and he gave me $100 and he said, it's requested up to the VIP. And so I went up and there was a redheaded girl sitting with this cute guy. It was really cute guy. And I was like, no, no, no. And then the cute guy says, "No, she's sitting here so no one else sits here because I'm waiting for you." And she got up and left. I sat down with him. He had a cast on his arm. I didn't know who he was. Didn't know anything about boxing. Didn't even know that it was an Olympic sport. All I knew is I was sitting with the guy. He was really cute. And then he kept coming in. He kept coming in, asking me out. And I was married and I was trying to make money. I had a job, and he wasn't paying anymore. So I ignored him. Then when my husband said, you'll never find anybody better than me, I went to work that night and Oscar was there. And I said, "Do you still want to go karaoke?" Because that's what he had asked me. And he said, "Yeah." And he had just got there. So his friends and all, we just got here. And he's like, "No, we're leaving." Do you want to hear the rest of the story, how it goes? So
Yeah.
we left. Okay, so we left and I didn't have any gas in my car. And I said, I have to stop and get gas. And I waited for him to get out of his car to pump my gas. And I said, "If you want me to follow you home, you're going to have to pump my gas. Like, really, I'm not pumping my gas." So Eric Gomez told Oscar, "You're not pumping her gas." And then he said, "If you don't pump my gas, I'm going straight home." And so Oscar hit him in the arm and he's like, "See, I told you." So he got out, he pumped my gas. And so I followed him home. And I mean, they all had their own like condos. Oscar had his condo was in Whittier. They all had separate condos. So when we got there, I remember walking into Oscar's condo and there was just stairs that went straight up. And I remember seeing this big glass cage. To me, it looked like a snake cage, kind of, is what I remember, because my brother had a snake similar and it was like lit up like that. And he goes, "No, there's not a snake. That's my gold medal." And I said, "Gold medal? For what?" And he said, "Boxing. I won a gold medal in 1992. And I go, "I'm really sorry. I did not even know that was an Olympic sport." I didn't even know anything about boxing. I knew everything about rock stars, but I knew nothing about boxing. And we just had a really great time. Really great time. We talked. He told me his life story because I didn't know who he was. And he actually enjoyed talking to someone who didn't know him. And he got to talk about things because I guess everybody else was like already knew this or already knew that about his mom. And I didn't know anything. So he got to tell me his whole life story, which is much different than what I've ever heard. He told me that his father asked him to get a loan for $25,000 from the manager that he had at the time was a car dealership. I think his name was Mike. I can't really remember, but he said it was for his mom's chemo, that they needed the $25,000 for her to get her chemo treatment. Oscar got the $25,000 and his dad took it and took his mistress to Vegas with the $25,000 and bought matching suits for the Olympics and wasted the $25,000.
Father sitting ringside has been very supportive throughout this. This is a family fight. The entire De La Hoya family, even back in East Los Angeles, grandfather.
And he also said that no one in his family would tell him that his mom was dying, because they said if he knew, he wouldn't train for the Olympics. He would stay with his mom. He wouldn't want to go to the Olympics. So everyone in the family was hush, and they couldn't tell him. And then when she passed away, he had went to the hospital to put lotion on her back, because I guess her skin was really dry from the chemo. But he went that day and she was not there.
Marco Rudolph was desperate to get into that kind of match with De La Hoya. He had to try and win, and it created this moment where Oscar De La Hoya signals his deceased mother.
And that's when he found out she was dead, that she died. And he hated everyone in his family. I mean, this man was crying, snot, nose, just like all I could do was hold him and hug him, because his mom's dead, and everybody knew she was dying, and he didn't get to spend those last minutes with her, those last days, or get to talk to her. And it was very, very emotional. I couldn't believe it, but I've never heard him say that, what he told me. I've never heard him repeat that or say anything to him about it. And that's what he told me, that he was not allowed to know that she was dying. And then when he went into the hospital to put the lotion on her, she was gone.
That's so sad. So sad.
It is very sad. And you know what? I don't know what he's been saying lately about his mom, but his mother, I know everybody's going to think this is crazy. I saw his mother. After my son was diagnosed with cancer, he was 3 months old. He had his diaper, when I would change his diaper, it would look like somebody blew their nose, like blood, just all in his diaper. And my husband, Audie, I was still, with him, and the studio that we had, you had to ring a bell, and it would make like a flashing light because it was so loud in there. He couldn't hear me yelling through the door. So I was ringing the doorbell, which would make this white flashing light, and he opened the door, and I said, I need to take Devin to the hospital. And he said, call his father and tell him that you need to take him to the hospital. And I went to my neighbors, so I didn't have a car at that time. I went to my neighbors, and I showed her the diaper. She goes, you have to go to the hospital right now. I'll take you. And so we got to the hospital, and he asked me to come. The doctor asked me to come into the room. He said, we need to talk about the C word. No. That didn't even, I couldn't even, there's no way. I walked out of the room. I called my papa, because he's a preacher, and I told him, they're saying that Devin has cancer. And he called everyone that went to our church that night. Everyone showed up, and they did a prayer. And I was laying in the room. Hold on. Devin went in the hospital, gray. He wouldn't eat. He was getting very skinny. And he was in, I was laying right next to his crib. And this nurse came in. She walked past me. I made him, she's going to my baby. I'm going to check her out, see who she is. I'm looking at her. She walks past me. She goes to his crib. And then she turns around and she looks straight at me. And then it was just some kind of, connection or something. She left the room. The next morning, Devin his face is, he's got rosy cheeks. His color's back. He's kicking, he's laughing. And they can't explain it. They did tests again, and they said that because his white blood cell count was extremely high the day before, but then the next day it was normal. Well, they couldn't explain it. So it went down one of those books as unexplainable, and I got to take my baby home that day. And I was so glad. Wow. And I thought it was because my grandpa was praying, and all the, everybody was at the church. It was a miracle. And then it was like 2 years later, I see this picture of Oscar. It's a picture of Oscar, but the eyes, his mother's eyes, it was in his eyes, like a picture of his mother. That's the woman I saw in that room. That's the woman that walked past me. And then Devin was absolutely fine after that. And I don't know how to explain that at all. But that's her. Yes. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. So now I know there's a
And that's not the only time I felt her. I felt her. Yeah, she's been around. And I know people think I'm crazy, but I thank her. I thank her so much. I don't know why Oscar's saying these horrible things about her, because it's not true.
Okay, because I know there's a lot that happened through here. You were still married, but you had Oscar's child, Devin, and there were problems with you and Audie. You were telling me before about custody or something was going on. What in all happened?
I filed for divorce, and Audie then filed for custody of Devin, and we were already divorced. And I mean, who wants to have a child with the wife who's had an affair with you know what I mean? It just didn't make sense, but it just kept on progressing. Like, I would have to go to court. Then it became, I had to take him to the supervised visits. And I just could not understand, this is my son. I need to get a hold of Oscar and let him know this is going on. They're trying to get my son away to my ex-husband, who's already confessed to taking all these drugs and being this. I mean, I just could not understand what was happening. And I mean, he had great attorneys, and Audie didn't have money, but he had these attorneys that were Oscar De La Hoya level attorneys. Everything I did, I fought. I had what was a 7:30 evaluation, and he did as well, Audie. And the doctor, Anita Lampel, claimed that Audie was the better parent. I couldn't understand that. So then I got a 733. And then they were two other doctors that came in and wanted to know where she had her notes. And then she hired an attorney, and she dropped out of the case. The visits increased in time. I wasn't winning at all. They were going to get my son away. I called Shana Mokler's attorney. What do I do? He said, they're trying to give your kid away. They're trying to get rid of your kid.
Who is
and
they?
I don't know.
Okay.
They are the people that control, I guess, Oscar's money, or I really don't know, but I just assumed that it was the CEO of Golden Boy, which was Richard Schaefer.
Did Oscar know he had a son?
Oscar knew he had a DNA test. He knew he had a DNA test done. I don't know if he knew the results. I mean, if you go in and take a DNA test, it's very likely somebody could say, oh, that was negative. You're not the father. I don't know. And I still haven't talked to him about that today. But let me see, where was I? Yeah, Audie. So I had another thing with Oscar's mom. I was asleep, and I don't really know if it was a dream but there was a woman that looked just like the lady that was at the hospital, that was the picture in Oscar's eyes. She said, take a vacation and don't tell anyone. She said, take a vacation and don't tell anyone. And so the next day, I planned all of that, and it just became so automatic that I did that. I told my daughter's father, Raj, to be playing tennis on Sunday, make sure that he was playing tennis and had someone there. I didn't want him to be accused of anything. And I took Devin. I don't even know how I did this, but all I know is that I got a car. I was able to rent a car with cash. I took my brand new Mercedes to um the mall. I left my cell phone in the car. Devin and I walked into the store, and then we walked out, and I walked around the side of the mall where I had parked the car that I had rented, and we took a vacation. And I said, honey, where do you want to go? Do you want to go to the zoo? You want to go see some animals? Or you want to go where we can ride rides? And he goes, I want to go see animals. San Diego Zoo, is that's where we went. No one was listening to me. I went to everyone begging, please, they're trying to get my son away to this man who is admitted to being on meth, heroin, cocaine, everything. He admitted to it. And I was losing my son, and I was having to take him to these visits with this man, and I couldn't understand why Oscar or his attorneys why they weren't stopping this. So that was his mom. She said, just take a vacation and don't tell anyone. So we went to San Diego, and we had a great time, and we were at the zoo, and this lady comes up to me and she says, you're on TV missing. You're on TV. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? She's like, it says you're missing on TV. We just saw the news. You're the boy and you're missing. And it's like they didn't want me to leave. Like they were going to try to keep me there. And so I took my son. We left, and then I got scared. I'm like, I knew that if I took my son away and there was these visits going on, that I could be charged with kidnapping, because it was a court order that he had to go see Audie. But it wasn't the day for that visit. So I called my mom, and she said, Oscar just said that Devin is his son. I didn't believe it. I fell to my knees. What? She said, yes, he just said on TV that Devin is his son. I was so happy. I couldn't believe it. And then there was this helicopter that came to San Diego, and at the hotel I was at, I was on the phone with my mom, and then this detective was calling me, and then there was a helicopter above following me all the way back to Anaheim to make sure that my son was safe. Of course he was safe. He was with me. So we get back to Anaheim. I remember we're at the police department, and Devin's fine, I'm fine. And they said, so when did you see yourself on TV? And I said, I never saw myself. I still don't believe that it's on TV. They thought I did it as a way to get some kind of fame or something, but that was not at all. And I didn't even expect Oscar say anything. And I kept telling them, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I've been trying to tell you guys for years that my son is at risk of being given away. No one's ever cared. So I took a vacation. That's it. And then that court case dropped. Everything dropped. The judge, Audie, everything just disappeared.
Your theory is that Audie might have had a legal help provided to him from people in the business with Oscar De La Hoya?
Audie told the detective he was offered $3 million to take custody of Devin. He told the detective that. I have that. It's on the court records, in Riverside. He thought he was being set up when I was missing. He thought he was going to get, that I was killed, and he was going to get blamed for it. That's how serious. It was serious. They were going to give my son away. They were trying to give my son away. And it happened. So it's not just my son. Michael Jordan's child, Tiger Woods' child. These are people that I'm friends with. I know it's happened. It's happened. And, now they have this movie out of these children. Imagine how much Oscar De La Hoya's son would go for. But, I just feel like I had help, or else he would have been gone. He would have been given away. Courts did it. It was all totally legal, and I just could not. What can you do? When it's actually a judge saying you have to send your child over to this person. I mean, I was ready to go to Mexico and raise my son there. I wasn't giving him over to anybody. I was just going to disappear. It was unbelievable.
Now, moving forward, because of your involvement with Oscar and raising Devin, you seem to have started studying boxing and were working your way into the field as a management type of figure.
Yes, I took Devin for the first time to see his dad at the Hopkins versus De La Hoya fight. And long story short, I went back to the dressing room area. Eric Gomez saw me. We had some words, and I was taken out back of the MGM, and I was dragged across the gravel. My son screaming, I'm fighting, I'm in these high heel shoes. I'm screaming, and this man heard me screaming, and he intervened. And I remember grabbing him and saying, "Get my son, get my son." And he had me on one side and Devin on one side, and he just took us to his charter bus. I called the police when I got to my hotel because I was bloody. I mean, I had proof. I had a black eye. It was already starting to swell. And I called again in an hour, and they told me that it was a family dispute and that they were not going to do anything about it. And so then I called Devin's therapist because he had been in therapy, and she said, "Angelique, as soon as the sun comes up, get out of Vegas." And so that's what I did. And then I realized, you know what? I'm going to get revenge. What is the sweetest revenge to success, right? I'm going to find a fighter to fight for me. And I'm going to make sure that I'm never going to be thrown out of any fight ever again. And that my son is going to be able to walk right in and say whatever he wants to say to his dad. So Devin was 4 when I started watching boxing. I watched every boxing, from like my favorite was, Arturo Gatti, and he was, Valero's the best boxer of all time. Don't let anybody tell you different. But I found a fighter, Omar Henry. He was amazing. When I saw him fight, he was like a mini Mike Tyson. Couldn't believe it. He came straight out of the corner. Every time he was 10-0, and it was first round knockout. And I was like, oh my God, this guy's amazing. And there was no one helping him. And so I contacted him and I said, if you'll help me train my son, I'll pay you $1,000 a week.
Devin De La Hoya, where is he? That's my boy, man. Where is Devin at, man? I miss Devin.
Come live with me. Let me manage you. Let me promote you. Sign a contract. And he did. And I paid him $1,000 a week. And as soon as he came to my house, he flew in. I picked him up in LA, took him to the Wildcard Gym. Freddie Roach knew of him because he had already sparred with Manny Pacquiao. And he was going to let him stay at the Wildcard Gym, get a room there. And I said, great. I rented him a car. You could get from the hotel. You could get the room at the Wildcard Gym. And then the next day, I'm watching a fight. It was the next. He got there on Friday. I'm watching a fight on Saturday, and I see Omar sitting there with Oscar and Oscar's wife at the fight in Vegas. I had just seen him on Friday, and Saturday he's in Vegas. And I'm like, and he's sitting with Oscar, my fighter. So I call him, and you can see him on the video. He's wearing a Jersey Shore t-shirt, sitting with Millie, Oscar's wife, and he's standing up, screaming. And then I call him, and you can see him talking to me when the camera's on him. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he goes, I got VIP. I got an invitation from Richard Schaefer. to come to Vegas and get VIP. He goes, and tomorrow I'm going to the magician. Who is the magician in Vegas? The David Copperfield. Front row, David Copperfield. Who does that? Who gets that? Nobody. Nobody gets front row at David Copperfield. And I said, Omar, you know you're signed with Top Rank. You can't go to another fight. You can't go to another promote. You cannot. It's like cheating on your spouse. Bob Arum saw him on TV and he iced him. He wasn't going to be fighting ever again. So I called Bob Arum and I begged him, look, Omar, he doesn't know. He doesn't know why he was invited. The only reason he was there is because of me, because I just signed him. And somehow Richard Schaefer or Oscar, they knew and they invited him. And so Bob Arum sent me a release form and he let Omar go, or else he would have been forever signed with Top Rank and never fought again. I mean, they can do that. And so can you believe that? Like the very next day that I fly him in, he's right there with Millie. Yeah, so they thought I would get mad and drop him.
I can't even believe this has happened. I mean, this was like, I'm just trying to, make a living for myself. I'm trying to help my son. I don't have options like this. I'm treated like, you don't even understand, but this was the one fighter that I was putting my hopes on of helping my child, and
Angela, don't. He's going nowhere.
I don't have anything else.
Their back, and people like me turn their back, and people that have done this for 25 to 40 years and know the television and know everything and where the money comes from, when they get away from it, they run.
He calls me 3 weeks later. 3 weeks later, he hasn't eaten. He hasn't had any place to stay. Angelique, can you come get me? Of course, I go, I get him. He comes back to my house. He gets, it's like 3 days later, 4 days later, he gets a package at my house and he's screaming, ecstatic. Oh my God, Floyd, give me this. Floyd gave me this. And he opens the package and it's a book. Like, it looks like a really old book. It's like brown, dark brown, thick. And he runs upstairs. And I'm like, he doesn't really seem like the kind that reads books.
This Floyd Mayweather?
Yes. Because he had been staying with Floyd and sparring at Floyd that whole time that he was in Vegas. And then he didn't have food or a place to stay. That's when I went and got him back. So then Floyd sends him this book, and I'm very snoopy. So I go upstairs and I see this book and I open the book and there's nothing. It's like hollow inside. There's no page, and there's syringes with this urine color liquid in the syringes. Steroids, obviously. Mayweather sent him. I took them over to my friend who was a dentist across the street. I said, can you just get rid of these for me, please? She said yes. She put them wherever they dispose of syringes. And he was irate when he found out that I had. And I said, why would you do that? Why would you take steroids? Oh, Angelique, you don't know. They do the VADA now. Floyd does steroids and they never test. Like every time they test him, he's always clean. He knows how to do them. And they do a cleaning, like they do it so many days. And then they have a day that they do the cleansing. It's like, I guess, getting a flush through your system, like a blood transfusion kind of thing that they do. And that's called the cleansing day. And then they can test for the fight and they're clean. But they've been doing steroids now 3 weeks straight. And so, so he told me that. And Let me try to remember what happened after that. He stayed with me for a while. I took him to the gym. Oh, then that's when David Ali came into the picture and he got signed with Don King. I was happy for him. I thought Don King was going to, because even Don King told him he was going to make him into another Mike Tyson. And he flew him down to Florida and he went with Danny Jackson, and Floyd Mayweather was there in Florida and they were at the mansion and he was sending me pictures and I was so happy for him. And I talked to Don King and I told him that I didn't want Omar to have a contract that had a signing bonus, because I knew Omar, if he had got a signing bonus, he would take off and go party. and so we agreed to that, and he was going to send him to Ohio to a training camp there. Omar went to the training camp in Ohio, and a heavyweight had an attitude with Omar and shoved him down a huge staircase. And Omar almost was ready to kill this guy. So then Don King sent Omar and Danny to spar with Margarito. And they were out in Mexico, out in the woods somewhere, and they left Omar out lost. Somehow he got lost, and he was in the woods all night long, couldn't find his way back to the camp. I think finally somebody did go looking for him and found him, but he told me that he felt like they did it on purpose, like just left him out there. And that's when Danny Jackson got fired and David Ali came into the picture, and then Omar was just gone. He was gone. He wasn't training. He was going to the awards show. He was meeting Barack Obama. I mean, he was meeting the president. You know, he was going to all these functions. And I mean, the only place, I don't know. I just, so we got to talking and he had a fight coming up. And I said, Omar, are you taking steroids? And he said, it doesn't matter because Don pays off the doctors. And so it doesn't matter. And I said, what are you talking about? And he goes, well, he pays off the doctors. He's like, it's not like he's going to say, like what he did to, he said, Duke. He didn't say Tommy. It's not like what he did to Duke from Rocky 3 is what he said. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, he told him he had a blood disease. The doctor to give the Duke a blood disease to keep him out of the ring.
The results of those tests did in fact confirm that I have tested positive for that virus.
And now the mind boggles as to how did I get it, right?
And I said, do not repeat that to anybody ever. Don't ever repeat that. And he just laughed about it like it was like, you know, no big deal. And I think he said it again. I got a couple messages recently from some people that was at Floyd's gym that heard Omar talking about that as well. And I was going to get those names over to Trisha. I didn't tell anyone because I wanted my fighter to be a champion. I felt, you know, I just should have said something sooner.
Now, this was 2012.
I think that he was killed 2013 is when he died.
Right. And this is not long before that, correct?
I don't know what happened. All I know is that, yeah, his fight was in 2012. He tested clean. And then he called me from the hotel and he said, I'm in so much pain, Angelique. I can't move. And David Ali is calling me a pussy, telling me that I need to get up. He goes, I feel like I'm dying. And his friend showed up to the room. David Ali already left him there in the floor. And his friend showed up and took him to the hospital. I had to fax my contract to the hospital to get information. And once they got my contract showing that I was his manager, they told me that his liver was ready to burst, that he had so much toxicity in his liver that his liver wasn't able to filter whatever he was on, what he was given. And I didn't know what he was given. I didn't know what to tell the doctor, but he said if he would have fought, he would have died. His liver would have burst. And he did not have cancer at that time. He just had a enlarged liver. And then they moved him to Chicago. And 2 weeks later, he had stage 4 cancer. 2 weeks later, they tell me they had stage 4 cancer and gallbladder. But his gallbladder had already been removed. You can see the scar. Like,
What?
if you look at it, pictures on, if you like, where he's fighting. I mean, I already knew that he had his gallbladder removed. I didn't think he was as bad as he was because there was these posts on his Twitter, and you're not dying if you're making like paragraphs of, posting. I later found out that was his cousin had taken his phone and was pretending to be Omar. And, I was so mad about that. But he died, and I wanted a pathologist to examine his body. And his mother refused that and let him go, let him just rest in peace. I was calling her all the time, begging her, please let me find out, because something's wrong. Just let me find out. And the day after his funeral, I was talking to her, and I have another witness to this. She was on the phone talking to me, and she thought that we disconnected the phone. I heard her talking. She bought a car for $25,000 cash. And I have a witness that heard the same conversation. She was begging for money for a funeral the day before. And now the day after he's dead, she's shopping for a $25,000 car for cash, and she's talking to the dealer. I can't go over 25,000. I have 25,000 cash. It's hard for people to understand because I had him come live with me because I was beat up behind MGM, and I wanted to be able to have a fighter and, just a champion, and be like, get out of our way, and have the right to go anywhere and have him fighting. And we did that. We accomplished that in Anaheim. It was so wonderful to have my fighter, have Don King there, and see Oscar and see Eric. And Eric hugged me, this big bear hug. And Devin got tickets to see the fights. But
did you realize that both of them died in 2013?
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Both Omar and Tommy Morrison died 2013, which is a very interesting overlap.
Yeah.
What brought you to Trisha?
Because she and I both had been on Facebook fighting. I was fighting for my son. I wanted to try to get a hold of Oscar, and I had this great fighter, Omar, and then he just mysteriously dies, and I remember him telling me that Tommy didn't have HIV and that he heard it from Don King. And I wasn't going to say anything, of course, when he was alive, because I didn't want to hurt his chance of being a champion. I mean, he also told me that that Mike Tyson's the prison sentence that he was in, that actually Don King is the one who set up the a pageant in Indiana, and that that whole thing was set up so that Mike Tyson would go to prison for, but he didn't rape anyone. What do you do? What do you do with nobody ever gets in trouble? Nobody ever goes to jail. There's just so much shit that goes on in this sport. They get away with everything, and it's people's lives. I mean, Tommy would have had, gosh, if you just think about the career, his life was stolen from him, and I even asked Trisha, I'm like, did you guys have sex? I mean, he was your husband. She was like, yeah, all the time. And like, you should have got HIV. Like, why isn't anybody even saying anything about that? Like, that's the first thing. That's proof to me, you know? And I feel so bad because I should have told her. I should have said something sooner.
So now that you and Trish are talking, and hopefully this will help get the word out a little bit more as well. Has anyone else spoken with you? Any kind of investigation possibilities?
No.
Anything come up?
No, you're the first person that's actually talked to me face to face. Like, I've had done podcast interviews over the phone. No one's interested. No one really. Trisha's got fight in her, and I respect that. She never stopped. And she loved her husband.
Absolutely, she did. She's done amazing work. You cannot.
I know, especially in the boxing world, women never do. You know, the women are like, for her to accomplish what she has is just amazing. They hate her. They all hate her, but I'm on her side.
Wow. So where are we now, and where are we going? Or are we just seeing how this?
Now we got this, you know, we're gonna have to do a second interview, I guess. I don't know. I mean, my son loves his father so much, so I can't really talk dirt about him around my son. No. But I respect his father because he loves his son and he's there for his son. But I don't know what the things he's saying and where that's coming from. I don't know what this new love of his, he hasn't spoken to 3 of the children that he's had with Millie. He hasn't talked to them in 2 years. And Auntiana and Jacob, the other 2 children that were there in documentary, he hasn't talked with them for a year. The only child that he talks to now is Devin, because Devin doesn't say anything about the girl. Like, Devin just, if you're happy, Dad, I'm happy for you. And so the other children don't like her, and so he doesn't talk to them anymore. I don't know.
So, to wrap things up, what is the one question that I should have asked you, but I neglected to?
John Bon Jovi? So, a whole other story. I got a story about that one. John Bon Jovi. Okay, so my girlfriend, Barbie, that we were in the group with, she was dating Richie Sambora. And she was standing next to me, and Richie knew that we were going to be there. So he had already set up for the spotlight to be on her. And so this big spotlight came on her, and she was like, yeah. But I was standing next to her, and that's when John saw me. So he comes over to the stage, and he starts pointing at me, and does this tongue thing. And I'm like, holy crap, John Bon Jovi, are you, what? Because I was like 23 maybe at the time. And so we go backstage after the concert, and he wants me to towel him off after his shower. So I'm toweling him off, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm toweling off John Bon Jovi. Oh my God. I'm losing my mind. Like, I am so starstruck. And he says, get your things. We already got your things from the hotel. It's on the plane. Let's get on the plane. Big, huge white plane. Me, Sandra, my other girlfriend, Christy. We're on this flight with John Bon Jovi going to Florida. So we get to Florida. They have a show with the Beach Boys. I don't know why, but it was a charity event. And then, so I end up smoking joint with John and Lenny Kravitz, and I passed out because I never smoked weed in my life. And I was like, he goes, babe, you look a little green. And I guess they carried me back to the van or something. I don't even know what happened. But so we get back to the hotel, and he has the whole 15th floor to himself. And I don't really know exactly what happened. I had a glass of champagne. It was about 10 o'clock at night. The next day is 4 p.m. And I wake up, my clothes are folded, and my butt hurts really bad. Really bad. And I hear him on the phone asking, how dilated are you? And I'm thinking, his wife is in labor. I'm laying here naked in bed. I'm going to hell. I'm certainly going to go to hell for this. But I get up and I get dressed and I'm confused. I know I've been drugged. You can tell. I just felt so confused. I go to my room, the hotel room. I go to Sandra, Barbie, and she tells me, don't say anything. You'll mess everything up. Well, you can't say anything. And I'm like, I was just really like brutally passed out, drugged. Don't say anything. And then I went to my friend Christy. Basically, she said the same thing. So for the next 2 days, I sat in my hotel room quietly. I bet you if that happened to me, there's a lot of other women it's happened to that we just don't remember. What can you do when you can't remember? You know, if you don't remember what happened, you can't really, it's his word against mine. And I was so young, and it was basically my boss telling me not to say anything. But yeah, he did something seriously. I still have, injuries from that. Yeah, John Bon Jovi. I can't even, when a song comes on, it makes me sick.
Yes, that was a truly unexpected turn.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but I'm okay. I've been through a lot, but I always feel like I got God on my side, and I know the power of prayer. Like, help Trisha. I know she can do this. And I know she can do this, I believe, with the power of Christ, power of truth. I know she can. And everything that I've accomplished, it's always been because I've turned it over to God. I can't do it on my own. Please help me. And that's the only way I feel like you can get anything done when you're up against evil, especially. So I had my son dedicated when he was a baby, and he's been protected from that. I believe that. So that was the one question.
That's probably as positive of a message as we could ever end on, is that you're going to keep fighting. And thank you so much for sharing all of this with me.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me on.